She fired my entire night crew to save $3.2 million. We were the only team certified to keep the reactor from melting down. Tuesday, 4:15 p.m. The station manager's conference room, second floor of the admin building at Glenfield Energy Nuclear Generation Station. I'd been called up from the control room, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the seating arrangement. Roy Collins, station manager, 55 years old, 22 years at the company, was sitting against the wall. Not at the table, against the wall, like a witness at a deposition. Linda Brooks from HR stood behind the chair at the head of the table, holding a tablet against her chest, eyes fixed somewhere on the carpet near my shoes. And at the head of the table sat Kayla Glenfield, 25 years old, Vice President of Strategic Operations. She didn't look up when I walked in. She was typing something on her MacBook, fingers moving fast, like whatever was on that screen mattered more than the man standing 3 feet from her. The room smelled like old coffee and dry erase markers. The fluorescent light above the table had that barely perceptible flicker that maintenance had been meaning to fix for 2 months. She closed the laptop. Not all the way. Just enough to look at me over it. "Horace, sit down." I sat. "I'm going to be direct with you because I respect your time." She folded her hands on the table. Manicured fingers. A ring on her right hand that probably cost more than my truck. "We've completed a comprehensive review of overnight operations as part of our redundancy reduction initiative. The data is clear. The night operations crew, all 31 positions, is being restructured out of the operational framework effective today." She paused. I think she expected me to react. "The automated monitoring system we're implementing is actually more reliable than human operators at this monitoring tier. It's a scalable efficiency gain. The savings are $3.2 million annually in direct payroll alone, and that's before we factor in the overhead reduction." She used the phrase redundancy reduction again. She called my crew legacy infrastructure. 31 people. Certified nuclear plant operators who'd spent years qualifying on the most dangerous equipment civilian workers are legally allowed to touch. Legacy infrastructure. Your role specifically is being restructured out as well. We're consolidating supervisory functions into the day shift management team. She reached beside her laptop and slid a folder across the table. Manila. Thin. Your separation terms are in there. They're generous. Linda Brooks shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Roy Collins didn't move. Didn't speak. He was staring at a spot on the conference table, like he was trying to burn a hole through it with his eyes. I picked up the folder. I didn't open it. "I understand. Good luck." 4 words. I set my security badge on the table. Didn't slide it. Didn't drop it. Set it down, flat, next to the folder she'd pushed toward me. I stood up. I walked out. I didn't look at Linda Brooks. I didn't look at Roy Collins, though I could feel his eyes on me as I passed. The hallway was quiet. My boots on the tile floor. That was it. I didn't say anything else. There wasn't anything to say. Not yet. My name is Horace Brennan. I'm 52 years old. I spent 15 years in the United States Navy, enlisted at 18, served as a machinist's mate nuclear aboard 2 fast attack submarines, including the USS Philadelphia, SSN 690. Reached Senior Chief Petty Officer, E8. My specialty was pressurized water reactor plant operations, emergency shutdown protocols, and primary coolant systems. The kind of work where if you make a mistake, they don't write you up. They seal the compartment. I was honorably discharged at 33 and walked into Glenfield Energy Nuclear Generation Station the same month. 19 years ago. I've been the night operations supervisor for 17 of those years. 31 certified nuclear plant operators and technicians reported to me. I trained every single one of them. I wrote the emergency protocol training program myself. 400 hours of documented instruction per operator. NRC certification exams. Annual recertification. Every qualification card routed through me as the certifying supervisor of record. I knew that reactor the way a surgeon knows a heart. Every pipe, every valve, every sensor reading that looked normal but wasn't quite right. If you knew what right looked like at 3 a.m. when the building was humming and the rest of the world was asleep. My wife Margaret passed 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. She was a high school chemistry teacher, the kind who stayed late to help kids who were failing, the kind who brought home papers to grade at the kitchen table while I got ready for the night shift. We had a system. She'd have dinner waiting at 4:30. I'd eat, kiss her goodbye, drive to the station. She'd leave my coffee in a thermos by the front door for when I got home at 7 a.m. After she died, I kept the thermos by the door. Took me about a year to stop reaching for it. Our son Eli is 19 now, sophomore at State, 2 hours east, studies mechanical engineering, smart kid, smarter than me, which is exactly what Margaret and I wanted. He calls every Sunday night. Sometimes we talk for an hour, sometimes 10 minutes. Doesn't matter. He calls. I live alone now, just me and Rex, a 9-year-old yellow lab who knows my schedule better than any operations manager ever did. He'd meet me at the door at 6:45 a.m., tail going every single morning for 9 years. The morning after the firing, I came home at 5 p.m. instead. Rex sat by the door and tilted his head sideways. Dogs know. Building that night crew was the work of 17 years. You don't just hire people to operate a nuclear reactor overnight. You grow them. I'd pull candidates from the day shift, watch them for months, how they handled monotony, how they handled surprises, whether they could stay sharp at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday when nothing had gone wrong in 6 weeks, and the temptation was to believe nothing ever would. I put each one through 400 hours of my training program before they ever sat a licensed watch alone. Emergency loss of coolant drills, station blackout procedures. The NRC tested them. I tested them harder. Every year, recertification. Every year, my name on the bottom of the qualification card as the certifying authority. I missed Eli's high school graduation. NRC inspection got moved without notice. They needed me at the station. Margaret was already gone by then, so there was no one to sit in the bleachers for both of us. Eli said he understood. He was 17. I'm not sure 17-year-olds understand that. I'm not sure I've forgiven myself for it. I worked through the week after Margaret's funeral because Unit 2 was in a planned outage, and I was the only one who knew the restart sequence modifications from the upgrade we'd done the previous fall. The crew knew. They didn't say anything about it. They all came to the wake in their work boots. Every one of them. 31 people standing in a funeral home in steel-toed boots and Carhartt jackets, paying their respects to a woman most of them had only met at the company picnic. That's who Kayla Glenfield called legacy infrastructure. Here's what Kayla didn't know about my financial situation, because she never asked. I own my house outright. Paid off the mortgage with Margaret's life insurance, because Margaret, being Margaret, had made sure the policy was enough. No alimony, no debt. I had 7 months of living expenses sitting in a savings account at the credit union on Route 9. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't trapped. Kayla had looked at a spreadsheet and seen a 52-year-old man with 19 years at one company and assumed that meant I had nowhere to go. She assumed wrong. 3 weeks before the firing, I need to go back. This part matters. I was walking past Robert Glenfield's office on the 2nd floor. I'd come up to drop a maintenance report with his assistant. The door was cracked open. Hallway carried sound better than people realized, especially that hallway. Tile floors, drop ceiling, the HVAC duct that ran right above the doorframe and acted like a megaphone if you were standing in the right spot. Kayla's voice, fast and certain. The voice of someone who had never been wrong about anything, because no one had ever been allowed to tell her she was. Night operations is where we're bleeding. 31 people, overnight, for scenarios that statistically never happen. Brennan will grumble, but he won't quit. He's 52. He's got nowhere to go. He'll fall in line or he'll leave and will promote from days. Robert's voice, slower, careful. You sure about the NRC side? I've reviewed the staffing models. The automated system covers the monitoring tier. We're fine. I stood in that hallway for 11 seconds. I know because I counted. It's a habit from the Navy. When something happens on a submarine, you don't react. You assess. You count. You breathe. And then you act. Or you don't. She'd reviewed the staffing models. The automated system covers the monitoring tier. We're fine. That's when something shifted in me. Not anger. Something quieter. Something colder. The kind of clarity you get at 400 feet below the surface when an alarm sounds and you have exactly enough time to do the right thing if you don't waste any of it on panic. She hadn't read Operating License Condition 3.7. I knew that the way I knew my own name. Because if she had, she wouldn't have said, "We're fine." Condition 3.7, specific to Glenfield Station's operating license, requires a minimum crew of 9 certified operators on site during non-day shift hours, not monitoring software, not an algorithm. Certified human operators with NRC recognized qualifications for emergency response at that specific reactor configuration, a GE Hitachi BWR 6 boiling water reactor. And every one of those qualifications routed through one person, one certifying authority, one name on every qualification card, every training record, every emergency protocol certification filed with the NRC for the past 17 years. Mine. I didn't say a word. I walked back downstairs. I went to my office in the control building, the one with the metal desk and the filing cabinet and the framed photo of Margaret and Eli at the coast. I sat down, I opened my laptop, and I called Phil Morgan. Phil Morgan, age 41, former Navy, 6 years as a lieutenant in the Judge Advocate General's Corps, now a nuclear regulatory attorney. We met at a JAG briefing 18 years ago when I was still in uniform, and he was a young officer with a law degree and a very specific interest in the regulations that governed the most heavily regulated industry on Earth. We stayed in contact. Phil was calm, precise, and had the kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly which page of the Code of Federal Regulations to turn to. I told him what I'd heard. I told him about Kayla's plan. I told him about the automated system. He was quiet for about 4 seconds. Horace, let me ask you something. Your training authority certification, the NRC recognized CRO credential for Glenfield's specific reactor design, is that filed under the company's name or yours? Mine. It's always been under mine. The company sponsors the application, but the credential is individual. You know that. I do know that. I just wanted to hear you say it. A pause. And how long does it take to qualify a new certifying authority for a specific facility? Minimum 18 months of documented qualification, if they can even find someone with the background. Right. I could hear him leaning back in his chair. Horace, listen to me. If she goes through with this, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to file. You don't have to threaten. You don't have to sue. You just have to exist. They need you more than you need them. And the NRC is not going to care about her staffing models. I poured black coffee from the pot in the break room. Vending machine blend. Bitter and burnt. So, what do? You go to work. You do your job. And when they hand you that folder, you take it. You walk out, and you do not answer your phone. That was it. 3 weeks later, Tuesday, 4:15 p.m., Kayla Glenfield sat at the head of that conference table and told me my role was being restructured out of the operational framework. I took the folder. I said 4 words. I set my badge on the table. And I walked out into the parking lot, got in my truck, and drove home. Rex met me at the door, confused by the hour. I let him out in the yard. I sat on the back steps. The sky was going orange over the tree line. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel defeated. I felt the way I used to feel in the engine room when the officer of the deck called a drill and the alarm started. Calm, focused, aware of exactly how much time everyone else was about to run out of. If you've ever had a boss or been in a situation like this, hit that like button and subscribe. The night I got fired, I poured 3 fingers of Blanton's on the back deck. The good bottle, not the daily drinker. Margaret had given it to me the Christmas before she got sick. I'd been saving the last third of it for something, though I'd never been sure what. Now I knew. Rex lay at my feet with his chin on my boot. The crickets were loud. The sky was the color of a bruise fading to black. Somewhere 2 hours east, Eli was in a dorm room studying thermodynamics, and he didn't know yet that his father had just become unemployed for the first time in 34 years. I sat there until the stars came out. Then I went inside, locked the door, and slept 7 hours straight. First time in years, I didn't set an alarm for 9 p.m. Wednesday morning, I called Phil Morgan at 8:15 a.m. "It's done," I said. "She fired me yesterday at 4:15. All 31. All of them? Everyone. Effective immediately. Automated monitoring system goes live today." Phil was quiet for 3 seconds. "Horace, I need to confirm something. Did she terminate you for cause, or was it a restructuring?" "Restructuring. Involuntary termination without cause. It's in the separation paperwork." "Good. Not that it matters much for your play, but it matters for the record." Another pause. "So the night shift at a licensed nuclear generation station is now unmanned by certified operators. Starting tonight. Starting tonight. And the NRC approved certifying authority for emergency operations training at that specific facility is currently sitting on his back porch with his dog." That's correct. I heard something I almost never heard from Phil Morgan. A laugh. Short, almost involuntary. The laugh of a man watching someone walk into a glass door in slow motion. "Horace, go walk your dog. Go fishing. Call your son. Do whatever you want. And do not answer your phone when they call. Because they will call." "I know. The only call you take is from Robert Glenfield himself, and only when he's ready to have a real conversation. Not his daughter, not their HR, not Roy Collins. Robert." "Understood. One more thing. The NRC resident inspector at your station. That's still Ed Mercer. Ed Mercer. Been there 9 years. Ed Mercer is going to notice that 31 certified operators vanished from the overnight shift roster. He's going to notice it fast. And he's going to do exactly what the regulations require him to do, which is flag it. You don't have to lift a finger. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is going to do your job for you." Click. That was Wednesday. Let me tell you what I did for the next 3 weeks while Glenfield Energy burned to the ground. I walked Rex every morning at 6:30, 2 miles through the neighborhood, down past the elementary school where the crossing guard, an older woman named Dorothy, always waved at us. I started cooking breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee in the French press instead of the vending machine sludge I'd been drinking for 19 years. I read the paper. I sat on the porch. I called Eli on Sunday night. Same as always. "Dad, why are you calling from the house phone? It's like 8 o'clock. Aren't you at work?" "I'm between things right now." "Between things? You? What does that mean?" "Means I'm home for a bit. Tell me about your classes." He paused. Smart kid. He knew something was off, but he also knew me. He knew I'd tell him when I was ready. He talked about his fluid dynamics professor for 20 minutes. I listened to every word. Meanwhile, inside the station, things were going exactly the way physics said they would. Day 1. Kayla's automated monitoring system went live. It was built by a firm called Rydell Systems, based out of Houston, a company that designed monitoring platforms for natural gas peaker plants, not nuclear. Gas peakers. The difference between monitoring a gas turbine And monitoring a boiling water reactor is roughly the difference between watching a campfire and watching a controlled nuclear chain reaction. But the consulting report looked good. Nice graphs, color-coded risk matrices. Kayla had presented it to Robert with 40 slides, and the confidence of someone who had never been inside a reactor building at 3 a.m. when the feed water pump made a sound it wasn't supposed to make. Day 4. The first anomaly. A feed water flow reading drifted outside its normal band at 2:17 a.m. The automated system flagged it as a Tier 2 deviation and logged it. That's all it did. Logged it. On a normal night, my operator on watch, probably Dennis Ward or one of the senior guys, would have walked down to the feed water bay, put his hand on the pipe, listened, checked the upstream valve positions, and traced the deviation to its source before it became a problem. The system logged it. A human would have fixed it. Day 6. The day shift operators started finding overnight logs full of flagged anomalies that nobody had responded to. 7 flags in one night. 3 of them Tier 2. 1 Tier 3. The day shift supervisor, a solid operator named George Hadley, sent an email to Kayla's office requesting clarification on overnight response protocols. Kayla's assistant responded that the concerns were being addressed through the optimization transition framework. Day 8. Ed Mercer, the NRC resident inspector assigned to Glenfield Station, a man who had been quietly doing his job in a small office on the first floor of the admin building for 9 years, filed a preliminary concern notice. He had reviewed the overnight staffing logs. He had reviewed the automated system's technical basis document, and he had checked it against Operating License Condition 3.7, which required a minimum crew of 9 certified operators on site during non-day shift hours. The automated system was not a certified operator. It was not 9 certified operators. It was a monitoring platform designed for gas plants, installed in a nuclear facility, by a vice president who had never read the operating license of the station her father built. Ed Mercer didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He filed the paperwork. That was enough. I didn't know any of this in real time. I was walking my dog and making eggs. But Dennis Ward, my second in command for 14 years, was still connected to people on the day shift. Dennis had been fired along with the rest of us, but he lived 3 miles from the station, and he'd been part of that plant for as long as I had. Navy veteran himself. 8 years as a machinist's mate first class, MM1, E6. Dennis didn't let go of things easily, and he had friends who still badged in every morning. Day 22, 6:47 a.m. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Text from Dennis Ward. A photograph of an NRC formal notice of violation, citing inadequate emergency staffing under 10 CFR 50.54M and non-compliance with Operating License Condition 3.7. Below the photo, 3 words. They're in trouble. I looked at the photo for a long time. I read every line. Then I set the phone down, poured more coffee, and let Rex out in the yard. The 30-day clock had started. If Glenfield Station did not restore compliant staffing within 30 days of that notice, the NRC would begin formal proceedings to revoke the station's operating license. Revocation, not a fine, not a warning letter. The permanent shutdown of a facility that generated the majority of Glenfield Energy's revenue. Day 24, the reactor entered mandatory cold shutdown. $8.7 million per week in lost generation revenue stopped flowing. The turbines spun down. The cooling towers vented steam into a sky that didn't care about Kayla Glenfield's optimization models. Kayla called it a temporary compliance calibration. Carol Hayes, general counsel, 48 years old, 11 years at the company, pulled the operating license file that afternoon. She read condition 3.7, for what I suspect was the first time since Kayla's plan had been approved. She closed the file folder, set it flat on the table, did not look up for several seconds. Then she called Robert Glenfield. "We have a situation." What happened next, I learned later from Dennis, who heard it from George Hadley, who was in the building when it happened. Kayla was in her corner office, the glass-walled one on the third floor with the view of the cooling towers, when Carol Hayes walked in holding the NRC enforcement letter in one hand and the operating license binder in the other. Kayla, I need to talk to you about the NRC notice. I've seen it. We're handling it. The Rydell team is adjusting the monitoring parameters to meet the overnight threshold. The overnight threshold isn't a monitoring parameter. It's a human staffing requirement. 9 certified operators, on site, licensed by the NRC for emergency response at this specific reactor configuration. Then we'll certify some of the day shift people for overnight. Certification for this facility's specific reactor design requires a minimum of 18 months of documented qualification under an NRC-recognized training authority. So we find a training authority. Carol set the binder on Kayla's desk. The NRC-recognized training authority for this facility is Horace Brennan. He's the only person who holds that credential for our reactor configuration. Every qualification card for the past 17 years has his name on it. Every emergency protocol certification filed with the NRC routes through him. Then we hire someone else. There is no one else, not for this facility, not in the time frame we have. The NRC's 30-day enforcement clock is already running. We have 8 days from the cold shutdown date before they initiate revocation proceedings. Kayla stared at her. This is a clerical issue. We'll get an extension. The NRC does not grant extensions on operating license conditions. This isn't a paperwork delay. This is a fundamental staffing violation at a licensed nuclear facility. They will revoke. The color left Kayla's face the way heat leaves a reactor during a scram, all at once. Call Brennan. She called me. I watched her name light up my phone screen on the kitchen counter. 11:15 a.m., day 22. I let it ring. Rex looked up from his spot on the rug. She called again at 2:40 p.m. Again at 5:17. Day 23. 3 more calls. The first one at 7:30 a.m. Then 10:00. Then 1:15 p.m. Day 24. The day the reactor went cold. 4 calls. 8 a.m. 9:45 a.m. 12:30 p.m. 4 p.m. Day 25. 3 more. 9 a.m. 11:30 a.m. 3:15 p.m. 17 missed calls across 3 days. I watched every one of them light up the screen, and I let every one of them go to voicemail. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Phil Morgan told me not to. Don't give yourself a reason to feel anything about it. Just let the phone ring. Roy Collins called twice. I let those go too. Roy was a good man, but he'd sat against that wall like a witness and let it happen. He'd made his choice. I was sitting on the back deck on day 25 when Eli called. Not Sunday, a Thursday. Dad, are you okay? You seem different lately. Different how? I don't know. Less stressed. Like you're actually here when you're here. Even on the phone, you sound different. I looked out at the yard. Rex was chasing a squirrel he was never going to catch. The afternoon light was coming through the oak tree Margaret had planted the year we moved in. I'm working through some things, Eli, but I'm good. I promise. Are you going to be at my thing next month? The engineering showcase? I'll be there. You said that about graduation. That one landed, right in the chest. I deserved it. I'll be there, Eli. Nothing is going to stop me this time. He was quiet for a second. Okay, Dad. Sunday evening, day 26, 7:42 p.m. The phone rang. Not Kayla. Not Roy Collins. Robert Glenfield. I looked at the screen for 5 seconds. Rex was asleep on the floor beside my chair. The house was quiet. The last light of the day was coming through the kitchen window, orange and thin. I picked up. Horace. Robert's voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. The voice of a man who built a company from a single natural gas facility 22 years ago and was watching it come apart. I need to talk to you. I'm listening. There's an emergency board meeting. Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. I need you there. I didn't say anything for a moment. Let the silence sit. On a submarine, you learn that silence is a tool. Most people can't stand it. They fill it. They rush. They give things away. Robert didn't fill it. I'll give him that. Tell me the meeting time, I said. Tuesday, 9 a.m. Boardroom, 3rd floor. I'll be there. I hung up. Set the phone face down on the arm of the chair. Rex lifted his head, looked at me, then settled back down. Tuesday, 9 a.m. 3rd floor boardroom. The same building I'd walked out of 26 days ago with a manila folder and no badge. I poured the last of the Blantons. 2 fingers this time. Held the glass up to the window light. The bourbon was the color of dark honey. The board meeting in 36 hours should be interesting. The drive to Glenfield Station took 22 minutes. Same route I'd taken for 19 years. Past the credit union on Route 9. Past the diner where Margaret and I used to eat on Saturday mornings before Eli was born. Past the elementary school where Dorothy still waved at crossing traffic even though school wasn't in session yet. I wore a clean button-down. Gray, no tie, work boots, same ones I'd always worn. I didn't dress up, and I didn't dress down. I showed up the way I always showed up. On time and prepared. The parking lot was half empty. That was wrong. On a normal Tuesday morning, the lot would be full of day shift vehicles, and the night crew's trucks and sedans would be filing out. Now, there was no night crew. The cooling towers were venting thin wisps of residual steam, but the plant was cold, had been cold for 4 days, $8.7 million a week in generation revenue, not flowing. The turbines that should have been humming were silent. You could feel the absence. A nuclear plant has a heartbeat when it's running. You don't hear it so much as you feel it through your feet, through the walls, through the air itself. That heartbeat was gone. I badged in at the front desk. Except I didn't have a badge. The security guard, a man named Pete Wallace, who'd been at the front desk for 11 years and who I'd said good morning to roughly 4,000 times, looked at me, looked at his screen, and picked up his phone. Mr. Brennan is here. He listened for 2 seconds, nodded, printed a temporary visitor badge, and slid it across the counter. 3rd floor, sir. They're expecting you. I know where it is, Pete. Yes, sir. I know you do. The elevator was the same elevator. The hallway was the same hallway. The tile floor, the drop ceiling, the HVAC duct that carried sound like a megaphone. I walked past Robert Glenfield's office. The door was closed. I walked past Kayla's glass-walled corner office. The lights were on. She was inside, standing, arms crossed, staring out the window at the cooling towers. She didn't see me pass. Or maybe she did and couldn't bring herself to turn around. The boardroom doors were open. Polished mahogany table, 20 feet long. Floor-to-ceiling windows along the east wall. Morning light pouring in. 8 leather chairs occupied. 2 empty. I knew every face at that table. Board members I'd briefed during NRC inspections. Board members who'd toured the control room with me during outages. Board members who'd eaten stale donuts in the break room at 2 a.m. during emergency drills because they wanted to see how the night crew performed under pressure. Robert Glenfield sat at the head of the table. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 26 days. His eyes found me the moment I stepped through the door. He didn't smile. He nodded once. Carol Hayes sat to his left. The operating license binder was in front of her. The NRC enforcement letter was in a separate folder, closed, squared precisely with the edge of the table. There was a chair at the far end of the table. A folded card stood on the polished wood in front of it. White cardstock, black type, Horace Brennan, Chief Nuclear Safety Officer. I looked at it. I didn't sit down. Not yet. Horace. Robert's voice. Still quiet. Still that tone I'd never heard before. Thank you for coming. Robert, before we start, I want to say something to you in front of this board. He placed both hands flat on the table. I let family cloud my business judgment. I approved a plan I didn't fully understand, from someone who didn't fully understand it either. And I did it without a full board review. That was my failure. I'm not going to dress it up. The room was silent. 8 board members, a general counsel, and a CEO, and the only sound was the ventilation system pushing air through the ducts overhead. The NRC has given us 8 days from cold shutdown to restore compliant staffing, or they begin license revocation proceedings. Carol, tell them where we stand. Carol Hayes opened the enforcement folder. She didn't look at Kayla's empty chair. She looked directly at the board. On day 22 of the current staffing configuration, the NRC issued a formal notice of violation under 10 CFR 50.54 M and non-compliance with operating license condition 3.7, which requires a minimum of 9 NRC certified operators on site during non-day shift hours. The automated monitoring system installed by Rydell Systems is not NRC approved as a substitute for licensed human operators during accident response sequences. The system was designed for natural gas peaker plants. It was never evaluated or certified for nuclear emergency protocols. She turned a page. The station entered mandatory cold shutdown on day 24. We are currently losing $8.7 million per week in generation revenue. Total losses to date are $26.1 million across 3 weeks of reduced and halted operations. The NRC's 30-day enforcement clock gives us 8 remaining days before formal revocation proceedings begin. Revocation is not a fine. It is the permanent termination of our operating license. She closed the folder, set it flat, looked at Robert. There is one path to compliance within the remaining window. The NRC recognized Certified Reactor Operator Training Authority for this facility is Horace Brennan. He is the only individual who holds that credential for our specific reactor configuration, a GE Hitachi BWR6. Every qualification card, every training record, every emergency protocol certification filed with the NRC for the past 17 years bears his name as certifying supervisor. Qualifying a replacement training authority takes a minimum of 18 months. We do not have 18 months. We have 8 days. She looked at me. The whole table looked at me. I pulled out the chair. I sat down. I set a single folder on the table in front of me. Inside it were 3 documents Phil Morgan and I had prepared the previous evening. A list of every night crew member I intended to recall, all 31, with their NRC qualification status and contact information. A draft emergency staffing restoration plan formatted to NRC regulatory specifications. And a signed letter from Phil Morgan confirming that my training authority credentials remained active, valid, and unaffected by my termination because the credential was individual, not corporate. I didn't open the folder. Not yet. The boardroom door opened. Kayla Glenfield walked in. She was wearing a blazer that cost more than the monthly take-home of any operator on my crew. Her hair was perfect. Her face was not. There was something around her eyes, a tightness, the look of someone who had spent 3 days calling a number that wouldn't answer and was only now beginning to understand why. I should be part of this discussion, she said. This is my department. Robert didn't look at her. Sit down, Kayla. She sat. 2 chairs for me. She didn't look at me either. Robert turned to the board. I'm calling a vote. First motion. Removal of Kayla Glenfield from the position of Vice President of Strategic Operations, effective immediately for cause. The cause is the unilateral elimination of NRC required staffing without board approval, resulting in a formal notice of violation, mandatory cold shutdown, $26.1 million in lost revenue, and imminent threat of operating license revocation. Kayla's head turned, fast. Dad, this is a board matter. You'll address the chair. You approved the plan. You signed off on it. I did. And that failure is mine, and I'll answer for it. But you presented a staffing elimination plan for a licensed nuclear facility based on a consulting report from a gas plant vendor. You did not read Operating License Condition 3.7. You did not consult the NRC. You did not consult our general counsel. You did not bring it to this board. And you told me we were fine. The room was quiet enough to hear the leather creak as board members shifted in their chairs. All in favor of removal. 8 hands. Every one. 8-0. Kayla sat there. Her jaw moved slightly, like she was about to speak, and then didn't. Her hands were flat on the table, the manicured nails pressing white against the mahogany. Second motion, Robert said. His voice was steady now. The quietness was gone, replaced by something harder. The voice of a man who'd built a company from nothing and was not going to watch it die. Appointment of Horace Brennan to the position of Chief Nuclear Safety Officer, with full hiring authority to restore night operations staffing, effective immediately. Compensation, $340,000 base salary. Direct report to the CEO and the board. Full authority over all NRC compliance and operator certification matters. All in favor. 8 hands. 8-0. I opened my folder. I slid the staffing restoration plan to the center of the table. I can have 14 of the 31 back within 72 hours. They're waiting for my call. The remaining 17 will take a week, maybe 2. Some of them took interim work. I'll need to have conversations, but they'll come back. How do you know? One of the board members asked. Tom Whitfield, longest serving member, 16 years on the board. Because I trained them. Because they trust me. And because they're the kind of people who don't walk away from a reactor. Tom Whitfield nodded. That was enough. Robert looked at Kayla. She was staring at the table. The fight had gone out of her. Whatever she'd rehearsed in that glass-walled office while staring at the cooling towers, it wasn't this. It wasn't an 8-0 vote from people who'd known her since she was a child. Kayla, security will escort you to your office to collect your personal items. She stood up. She didn't slam the chair. She didn't cry. I'll give her that. She walked to the door with her back straight and her chin level, and the only thing that gave her away was her right hand, the one with the expensive ring, trembling slightly at her side. The door closed behind her. Pete Wallace was waiting in the hallway. Same man who'd printed my visitor badge 90 minutes earlier. 11:22 a.m. 26 days after she'd fired me at that same conference table without looking up from her MacBook, Kayla Glenfield was escorted out of the building she'd been born expecting to inherit. I sat in that boardroom for another 40 minutes. Carol Hayes and I went through the NRC response plan, line by line. Robert listened. The board listened. Nobody interrupted. Nobody used the word optimization. Nobody mentioned scalable efficiency or data-driven transitions or redundancy reduction. We talked about staffing counts and qualification timelines and NRC notification protocols, and every person at that table deferred to the man in the work boots. At 12:05 p.m., I walked out of the boardroom and took the elevator down to the first floor. I stepped outside into the parking lot. The sun was high. The cooling towers stood white against a blue sky, quiet and waiting. I pulled out my phone and called Dennis Ward. He picked up on the first ring. How'd it go? Start calling the crew. I want 14 names confirmed by end of day Wednesday. Silence. Then, very quietly, yes, sir. I drove home. Rex met me at the door. He didn't tilt his head this time. His tail was going. He knew. I sat on the back deck in the chair I'd been sitting in for 26 days. The oak tree Margaret planted was full and green, the afternoon light coming through the leaves the way it always did in late spring. I pulled out my phone and called Eli. Dad, it's Tuesday. You never call on Tuesday. I know. I wanted to tell you something. I got a new job. A new job? What happened to the old one? Long story. I'll tell you when I see you. When's that engineering showcase? 3 weeks. The 14th. Dad, are you actually going to come? I'll be there, Eli. Front row. He was quiet for a second. You sound different. Different how? I don't know. Like you again. Like you used to sound when I was a kid, and you'd come home in the morning, and Mom would have your coffee ready. I closed my eyes. Rex put his chin on my boot. Yeah, I said. Something like that. The week after the board meeting, I started rebuilding. Dennis Ward was the first call. He was at the station by Thursday morning, 6 a.m., standing in the control room like he'd never left. 22 of the 31 accepted within the first 5 days. The other 9 took a little longer. 2 had taken jobs at other facilities. I made calls. I explained the situation. They came back. Every one of them. The NRC received our staffing restoration plan on day 30, with 48 hours to spare. Ed Mercer reviewed it personally. He signed the compliance acknowledgement without comment. The reactor came back online the following Tuesday. I stood in the control room at 11 p.m. and listened to the turbines spin up. Felt that heartbeat come back through the floor and the walls and the air itself. And something settled in my chest that had been unsettled for a long time. Kayla Glenfield took a consulting position at a firm in Chicago. I heard she deleted the LinkedIn post. The Northwestern classmate who'd written Queen did not write a follow-up. Robert Glenfield retired 8 months later. Quietly. No press release. He shook my hand on his last day and said 2 words. Thank you. I shook it back and said 2. You're welcome. The nameplate on my office door reads Chief Nuclear Safety Officer. Horace Brennan. It's on the 2nd floor now, not the basement control building. But I still walk the control room every night shift. Every single one. My crew expects it. I expect it of myself. Last month, Eli drove 2 hours west for the weekend. We sat on the back deck with Rex between us. Eli had a beer. I had bourbon, 3 Fingers. New bottle now, not Blanton's. The Blanton's was gone. Margaret's last bottle, finished the night before the world shifted back into place. That felt right. Eli asked me what happened, the whole story. I told him, all of it. The firing, the silence, the phone calls I didn't answer, the board meeting, the nameplate. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, Dad, can I ask you something? Sure. When she fired you, when you sat in that room and she called your crew legacy infrastructure and told you the machines were better than your people, were you angry? I thought about it. Really thought about it. The way I used to think on the boat, 400 feet down, when the answer mattered. No, I said. I wasn't angry. I was certain. He nodded. He didn't ask what I was certain about. Smart kid. He already knew. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the building isn't the one making noise. It's the one who built the building, trained the crew, signed every certification, and walks out the door without raising his voice. Because silence, real silence, the kind they teach you in a submarine, when the ocean is pressing against the hull and the reactor is the only thing between you and the dark, that silence isn't empty. It's full of everything they forgot to value. And it waits. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and ring that notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.